Well, welcome back to this opportunity. It's such a privilege to me to be able to share with you each week. Of course, our hearts are just broken over the news that pours in from the Ukraine. We thank the Lord for servants of the Lord who are involved, helping especially refugees. And we had a great Zoom prayer meeting, including our leader within Ukraine sharing with us. Well, I've just come back from Heathrow Airport for a very special event welcoming my granddaughter, who was born in London and moved to Idaho at a few years of age. And she's, for the first time, brought her husband, Luke. So I just met them together with my daughter at Heathrow. And that was very, very special. I wanted to share with you, forgive me for always sharing sevens, but I wanted to share with you 7 words that in these senior years, 19 years since I stepped out of the leadership of OM, have taken on different meaning, have become more important in my life and in my theology, and have helped me stay focused with my emphasis on the word and prayer and evangelism and discipleship, things I've written about in my books. And I always appreciate anybody who actually takes time to read my book, especially when they tell me about it. The first word is the word mystery. You've heard me mention that. And that has really helped me, even in the times like these kind of wars. And my whole life, there's been wars. I was born in 1938 as Hitler invaded Czechoslovakia. And then there was Korea, then there was Vietnam, then there was the Gulf. And instead of trying to figure out exactly where God is and make sometimes very silly statements, I embrace the mystery of what God has allowed, the mystery of putting of free will and sovereignty. And I've quoted to you many times the last verses in Romans 11. Oh, the depth of the wisdom and the knowledge of God. His judgments unsearchable, his ways past finding out, who was given to him that he must give him back in return. There are other similar verses throughout the Word of God. But the word mystery for me covers many other areas that the more I study, the more I don't seem to have a complete answer. And I've pretty well been nonstop studying since 6 years of age. I've never had a time when I wasn't reading, studying, learning. In recent years, quite a few years, tremendous documentaries, magazines like National Geographic. So it's not just Christian material, though that probably makes up a good part of it. And it really helps me that I don't need to know all the answers. And someday I'll be with him and I'll see face to face. I've shared with you how I've been reading this book about the heresy of certainty, benefit of the doubt, just sharing how we can press on in our Christian life, even when we're struggling with doubt. The idea that if we're a committed Christian, we can't doubt. That's not the way our minds work. And I felt, especially in the area of prayer, sometimes the lack of integrity, lack of honesty comes in failing to be honest, that prayers have not been answered. Prayers even for people who have clearly died without knowing Jesus. Of course, people always say, well, he may have cried out to the Lord on his deathbed. So I'll leave that for now, as the second word is the word uncertainty. We live, of course, in uncertain days. And I think an important part of our walk of faith is we often don't know what's going to come tomorrow. At the end of last May, I went into hospital just to have a checkup. I wasn't really ill except a bit of breathlessness. But my cautious cardiologist, who's been taking care of Drina, He wanted to go in there and take a look, maybe put a stent. But when he saw the potential blockage, he felt I needed triple heart bypass surgery. And seemingly before I knew it, I was waking up in intensive care. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I think when we get older, we can get more anxious. And I've been making use of lots of those verses about dealing with anxiety, casting every care upon him. He careth for you. And the challenge of this Sermon on the Mount, dealing with worry, the challenge of Philippians, so many passages. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love and a power and a sound mind. So we can embrace uncertainty, yet we keep going forward. We keep going forward. And I'm sure I've already hit you with one of my favorite verses. Buffet my body, bring it into subjection, lest after preaching to others, I become a castaway. I think it's a great mistake that the spirit-filled life is a life in which sort of automatically the Christian ethics and Christian character flows out of us. Everything in the Christian life is a cooperative effort. Jesus said clearly, if anyone will follow me, let him deny self. That's our responsibility. Take up the cross daily and follow him. Jesus has done his part. We now have to do our part, and often it's whether we feel like it or not. But it's wonderful, isn't it, when we don't feel and we maybe aren't quite with it on the day or do something stupid, God still loves us. And we need to revel in his love and his grace and sing again. He giveth more grace when the burden grows greater. He increases the strength as the labors increase. To added affliction, he added his mercy. To multiplied trials, his multiplied peace. I always think of Ray Lynch singing that song. By the way, I've had so many encouraging emails from people who've had our special celebration letter, as this is the 60 years that Dreen and I have been ministering here in the UK as of this time of the year, way back in 1962. So it's the 60th anniversary of OM UK, and we're having a special celebration event the evening of June 8th right here in central London, the Emmanuel Center. If you're interested in being with us, please don't hesitate to contact me. And I always show in my email because I never get too many emails. And there it is again. We just love to hear from you with prayer requests, with anything that's on your heart, generally not too long. And then the third word that I want to leave with you that's become rather big in my life in the last couple of years is toxicity. Of course, I've been trying to get people to read my newer book, Confessions of a Toxic Perfectionist. And I think people really do need to read this. There's very few people I've met, even people I love and respect and I'm close to, that I've not seen, as in my life, I've not seen that toxic factor come out in certain situations. And surely, if we have any toxic factor that's functioning in our life, we want to deal with it. We don't take it lightly. We don't say, well, this is the way I am. This is the way my father is. And, take it or leave it. It's the kind of line some men give to their wife during times of difficulty. And I believe what I've shared in this book about war and the causes of many wars is actually true. If you really study the Ukraine thing going back 10, 15, 20 years, you'll see that what I wrote in that book has actually happened again in the Ukraine. And then the fourth word may surprise you, but it's the word limitation. Just being honest about limitation. My limitations haven't come just because I've got older. They've come because of reality, realizing that certain goals and aims that I had in my life, I've not reached them. And I'm limited what I can do about situations. I'm involved with global sex trafficking. I'm involved with the AIDS crisis, of course, the COVID crisis, the challenge of poverty. Many of you have heard me speak about the 7 people laying by the side of the road. And almost from the time I get up till the time I go to bed, I'm thinking about these, praying about these things, trying to raise funds, trying to encourage people out on the front lines. We're sending thousands of books out, constantly calling people to strong commitment and discipleship, and involved in over 100 nations. But we have our limitation. We have to get our sleep at night. We have to take care of our health. We have to try to eat as healthy as possible. And we need to be sure we don't chastise ourselves because we're not doing enough. Characters like me, we tend to think we're never doing enough. This is not pleasing to God. They have an element of truth in it. And then the fifth word is the word complexity. Again, I wish I could speak for a longer time. I think we hear a lot of generalizations, even by somewhat famous people. If you watch the news, like I've said before, I follow about 6 different news channels. Not a huge amount of time, but enough to hear the main points. And I feel often people are failing to face the complexity. Even people that went extreme, and we talked about extremism a few blogs back on the climate change thing. They didn't dream of the complexity we're facing right now with this horrendous war in Europe, and with the energy problems, with the financial problems, all the other problems that are come, as supposedly we're making climate change the number one. And you'll find also in ministry and in church life, and yes, in global missions, complexity. And we need to learn to live with it. We need to embrace it. Even in understanding ourselves, we may feel that we're rather complex. Some people who have spoken to me about my life say they find me a bit complex, because in many ways we're different people in different situations. We hope as godly followers of Jesus, the basics are the same, but how we react in different situations, there's a great variety. As we go through the whole Bible, we see enormous complexity, these complex situations that the prophets got into. And then a lot of the epistles are about difficult, complex situations. And now we face quite a few in the church, and we get these strong one-line blasts, pushing us in a particular direction. And often it's a lot more complicated than this particular person, even in their book, might be writing about. And then the 6th word, I don't need to say much, is the word messiology. And I really believe, I wish someone else had written this book, then I could push it a lot more. But I have received amazing letters from people that have had such a great change of heart and mind. The core of it is that God works in messy situations. God works when people are carrying even ugly cultural baggage, which we don't want. And yet God may work in that situation. God may be using someone who we think is completely crazy in terms of their politics, in terms of their cultural ideas. That doesn't justify anything, but it helps us to be more forgiving. It helps us to, I believe, be happier in the Lord and living in this fallen world in which we find ourselves. And then my 7th word is the word diversity. I think this is one of the blessings of the ship ministry, and we're still looking for recruits, is people who have been reared in a rather closed situation, maybe one particular church or denomination, one particular culture. They go to this ship and they see diversity, different people from different countries, different languages. And it really often, not always, changes their lives. And I think in the world today, instead of being frightened by globalization and frightened by some of these huge explosions in technology and new telescopes thrown into space, we need to learn to embrace diversity, and also in the body of Christ. The fact that there are different denominations is not something wrong. It's not something evil. And the idea, if we're all one, so much more will be accomplished, that's proven not to be true. That's part of what I share in my book, Messiology. God works in the midst of a variety of different denominations. They go back to different founders, different periods of history, different languages. And the fact now that the number is gone up to somewhere over 25,000, which really depresses some idealistic people, I just celebrate God working in the midst of diversity. Again, doesn't mean I have to agree. Doesn't mean I'm going to go to that church and get all involved, but I can say, Lord, bless them, use them. Often I've prayed for people that I haven't particularly agreed with and said, Lord, please bless them more than you bless me. Bless their organization more than you blessed OM. And there'll still be plenty from God's great resources to keep us going. God bless you as you consider these 7 mega words, of which we could find many, many verses for each one of them. God bless you. We want to hear from you.